Encyclopedia Brown. Everyone's favorite boy detective. Shows the way. By Donald J. Sobel. 1. The Case of the Growling Dog. Crime was increasing everywhere in the United States. Except in Idaho. No one child or grown-up got away with breaking the law in Idaho. Apart from catching crooks lickety-quick, Idaho was like most seaside towns its size. It had rich families and poor families, lovely beaches, 3 movie theaters, and 2 delicatessens. It had churches, a synagogue, and a little league. And it had 10-year-old Encyclopedia Brown, America's Sherlock Holmes in sneakers. Encyclopedia's father was chief of police. People across the country thought he was the smartest police chief on earth. Chief Brown was smart. His officers were brave. But once in a while they came up against a crime they could not solve. Then Chief Brown knew what to do. He went home. Over dinner, he told Encyclopedia about the case. If Encyclopedia didn't solve the mystery before he finished his first glass of milk, his mother was disappointed. He was an only child. Chief Brown would have liked to see a statue of Encyclopedia placed outside the FBI building. He hated keeping his son's detective work a secret. But what good would it do to tell? Who would believe that the mastermind behind Idaho's wonderful police record could live happily on bubble gum and popcorn? So Chief Brown said nothing. Encyclopedia never breathed a word about the help he gave his father. He didn't want to seem different from other 5th graders. But he was stuck with his nickname. Only his parents and his teachers called him by his real name, Leroy. Everyone else called him Encyclopedia. An encyclopedia is a book or set of books filled with facts from A to Z. So was Encyclopedia's head. He was really more like an entire library, only better. His pals could ask him questions without having to whisper. One evening over soup, Chief Brown said, "I think I know who stole Mr. Dale's electric drill last night." "Who?" asked Mrs. Brown. "Ed Baker," answered Chief Brown. "Isn't he the teenager who stole a car in January and wrecked it over in Glen City?" asked Encyclopedia. Chief Brown nodded. "Ed was seen running near Mr. Dale's house last night around the time someone broke into the garage and stole the electric drill and some other tools." "Did you arrest him, dear?" asked Mrs. Brown. "I can't prove he did it," said Chief Brown. "Ed claims he was running to get in shape for football. He says he ran by Mr. Dale's house, but didn't stop." "Don't you have any clues?" asked Encyclopedia. "2," replied Chief Brown. "We found one perfect footprint in the backyard. A left sneaker print. It was made in a spot of soft earth." "Does it match Ed's sneaker?" asked Mrs. Brown. "It's a half size too small," said Chief Brown heavily. "Perhaps Mr. Dale made the print himself," suggested Mrs. Brown. "Mr. Dale insists that no one has been in the backyard for nearly a week," said Chief Brown. "The rain yesterday afternoon washed out all the old footprints." "So the sneaker print is new," said Encyclopedia. "It has to be the thief's." "What's the second clue, Dad?" "A piece of a shirt," said Chief Brown. "It got caught on a branch 6 inches above the ground." "Did you find a torn shirt at Ed's house?" inquired Mrs. Brown. "No," said Chief Brown. "Ed probably didn't realize he had left a footprint. But he would have discovered the rip and thrown the shirt away." Chief Brown took a spoonful of soup. Then he continued. "Ed must have been crawling on his stomach in order not to be seen," he said. "What makes you think that?" asked Mrs. Brown. "If Ed had been walking, the low branch would have ripped the bottom of his trousers, not his shirt," said Chief Brown. "But what he did next is the puzzler." "How come?" said Encyclopedia. The low branch is outside the fence that goes around Mr. Dale's house and garage, said Chief Brown. At night, a big German shepherd named Rover runs loose inside the fence. Said Encyclopedia. Ed crawled to the fence so as not to be seen and climbed over. But the question is, how did he get past Rover? Is Rover such a good watchdog? Asked Mrs. Brown. Rover is an attack dog, said Chief Brown. He's trained to bark at strangers and to seize their sleeves or trousers in his teeth. Ed could have fed him something to keep him quiet, said Mrs. Brown. Rover won't take food from anyone except Mr. Dale, replied Chief Brown. Didn't Mr. Dale hear anything at all last night? Asked Encyclopedia. He heard Rover growling, said Chief Brown. Since Rover is trained to bark at strangers, Mr. Dale thought the dog was chasing a frog or a rabbit. He didn't get out of bed to look. Perhaps Ed clubbed Rover and knocked him out, offered Mrs. Brown. Rover wasn't hurt, said Chief Brown. Well, not in the usual way. What do you mean, Dad? Inquired Encyclopedia. This morning Mr. Dale found Rover curled up by the back door, whimpering, said Chief Brown. The poor dog has been that way ever since. He won't eat. It's as if he had a nervous breakdown last night. My word, exclaimed Mrs. Brown. She looked at Encyclopedia for help. The boy detective had already closed his eyes. He always closed his eyes when he did his deepest thinking on a case. Suddenly he opened them. Ed made the footprint. He stole Mr. Dale's tools. But the footprint is too small, protested Mrs. Brown. The footprint was made when the earth was still wet from the rain, said Encyclopedia. It's been hot and dry since. Of course, cried Chief Brown. How stupid of me! When earth dries, it shrinks. So the footprint is smaller than when it was made. Oh, Leroy, said Mrs. Brown proudly. Then she gave a troubled frown. But how did Ed get past Rover? The clue of the torn shirt tells us how, Mom, answered Encyclopedia. How? 2. The case of the red harmonica. During the winter, Encyclopedia did his detective work at the dinner table. When school let out for the summer, he decided to help the children of the neighborhood. So he opened an office in the garage. Every morning after breakfast he hung out his sign. Thursday afternoon a small boy entered the detective agency. He looked as happy as a cheerleader in a graveyard. I want to hire you, he said, putting 25 cents on the gasoline can beside Encyclopedia. My name is Northcliffe Hicks. Yesterday was one sad day for me. How come? Asked Encyclopedia. Soft music, replied Northcliffe. Do you know anything about soft music? It goes with soft lights, answered Encyclopedia. Is this some affair of the heart? No, of the ears, said Northcliffe. He explained. Yesterday afternoon he had been sitting by Mill Pond playing his new red harmonica. A big kid had come up holding a funny whistle. The big kid said I might be good at playing loud, said Northcliffe. But he was better at playing soft. In fact, he claimed to be the champion soft music player of the world. Could he prove it? Asked Encyclopedia. He challenged me to a soft music contest, said Northcliffe. His rules. That really tied your lips, eh? And how? Said Northcliffe. Each of us had to play a tune so softly the other couldn't hear it, and yet loud enough to wake a bulldog that was sleeping across the pond. What did you play? Kitten on the Keys, said Northcliffe. I figured a dog would go for it. I might as well have played the dance of the Spanish onion on a Frankfurter roll. That mutt lay like a dead battery. Then the big kid said he'd blow Coney Island Babe on his whistle. I didn't hear a thing. But that bulldog jumped up and raced around, crazy as a bee in a honey pot. Don't take it so hard, said Encyclopedia. You lost to a champion. I don't mind losing, said Northcliffe. But the big kid took my red harmonica. He said if he'd lost, he'd have given me his whistle. The liar! You should have made tracks, said Encyclopedia. I tried, but his 3 friends caught me, said Northcliffe. They wore shirts with the word tigers written across the chest. Tigers? I should have guessed, exclaimed Encyclopedia. The big kid was Bugs Meany. Bugs Meany was the leader of a gang of tough older boys. They called themselves the Tigers. They should have called themselves the Umbrella Carts. They were always pulling something shady. Bugs must have blown a dog whistle, said Encyclopedia. People can't hear it. Only dogs can. And I thought I was going deaf, yelped Northcliffe. That no good cheat. Can you get back my harmonica? I can try, said Encyclopedia. I've dealt with Bugs before. Let's go see him. The Tigers' clubhouse was an unused tool shed behind Mr. Sweeney's auto body shop. Bugs was alone when Encyclopedia and Northcliffe arrived. He was puffing tiger rag on a shiny red harmonica. At the sight of the 2 boys, he switched to shoo, fly, don't bother me. Scram, he growled at Encyclopedia. Or FLI put your head in a cast. Encyclopedia calmly relieved Bugs of the harmonica and played I've Heard That Song Before. Then he said, This is Northcliffe Hicks. He claims you stole his red harmonica. That soft music contest was a phony, put in Northcliffe. You blew a dog whistle. He took the harmonica and rendered the opening bars of You Took Advantage of Me. Soft music? Dog whistle? Cried Bugs. You're completely out of your tree. He snatched the harmonica and began playing Imagination. You couldn't beat me in a fair contest, and you know it, said Northcliffe, seizing the harmonica. He blew little white lies. Oh, yeah, said Bugs. Let's see how well you play with loose teeth. He grabbed the harmonica and blew just before the battle, Mother. Cut the tough guy stuff, Bugs, warned Encyclopedia. That's Northcliffe's harmonica. I suppose you're going to say that you found it. Bugs blinked. Why, so I did, he said with a sly smile. I found it last night on a trash pile. Where? Demanded Northcliffe. Along Miller Road, said Bugs. It was dark except for some blue lights strung on the palm trees by the trash pile. I saw something red shining. I walked closer. It was the harmonica. That's our trash pile, Northcliffe whispered to Encyclopedia. Dad strung blue lights for a party in the backyard yesterday. But I didn't throw the harmonica away. Honest. Bugs grinned, raised the harmonica to his lips, and blew The Best Things in Life Are Free. Blow till you're blue in the face, said Encyclopedia. You won't make me see red. You stole the harmonica. What made Encyclopedia so sure? 3. The case of the knockout artist. Bugs Meany's heart burned with a great desire. It was to get even with Encyclopedia. Bugs hated being outsmarted by the boy detective. He longed to punch Encyclopedia so hard on the jaw that the lump would come out the top of his head. Bugs never raised a fist, though. Whenever he felt like it, he remembered Sally Kimball. Sally was the prettiest girl in the 5th grade and the best fighter. She had done what no boy under 12 had dreamed was possible. She had flattened Bugs Meany. When Sally became the boy detective's junior partner, Bugs quit trying to use muscle on Encyclopedia. But he never stopped planning his day of revenge. Bugs hates you more than he does me, warned Encyclopedia. He'll never forgive you for whipping him. Just then Ike Cassidy walked into the detective agency. Ike was one of Bugs' pals. "I'm quitting the Tigers," he announced. "I want to hire you. But you'll have to take the quarter from my pocket. I can't move my fingers." "What's this all about?" asked Encyclopedia. "Bugs' cousin, Bearcat Meanie, is spending the weekend with him," said Ike. "Bearcat is only 10, but he's built like a caveman. Bugs said he'd give me $2 to box a few rounds with Bearcat." "Bearcat tricked you and stepped on your fingers?" guessed Encyclopedia. "No, he used his head," said Ike. "I gave him my famous 1-2, a left to the nose followed by a right to the chin. I must have broken both my hands hitting him." "You should have worn boxing gloves," said Sally. "We wore gloves," said Ike. "Man, that bear. Cat is something else." "Did he knock you out?" asked Encyclopedia. "He did and he didn't," said Ike. "His first punch didn't knock me out and it didn't knock me down. But it hurt so much I just had to go down anyway." "Good grief," gasped Encyclopedia. He licked you with one punch?" "With 2, corrected Ike. When I got up, he hit me again. I was paralyzed. I couldn't move. I couldn't move enough to fall down." "Bearcat sounds like a coming champ," observed Sally. "He's training for the next Olympics," said Ike. "Isn't he a little young?" said Sally. "You tell him that," said Ike. "He hurt me when he breathed on me." The more Encyclopedia heard about Bearcat, the unhappier he became. "Why do you need a detective?" he asked. "Bugs said I didn't last long enough to earn the $2, replied Ike. "I want you to get my money." Encyclopedia gulped. The case looked like a bloody nose for sure. "Forget the $2, he suggested. "It's a matter of pride," said Ike. "Bearcat made me mad. He said I fought like a girl." "Oh, he did he?" cried Sally. She stamped her foot. "We'll take the case. I'd love to teach Mr. Bearcat Meanie how a real girl fights." That, thought Encyclopedia, is what Bugs wants. He said nothing, however. When Sally was out to defend her sex, arguing was useless. He took a quarter from Ike's pocket and the three of them went to see Bugs. They found him sitting in the doorway of his clubhouse. "Did you lose your way?" snarled Bugs. "The ladies' sewing circle meets down the street." "We've come to get Ike's $2, said Sally. "You're a squirrel's idea of heaven," retorted Bugs. "I don't pay boys to fight like girls." "Maybe you've forgotten how well a girl can fight," snapped Sally. "Shall I remind you?" Bugs held up his hands playfully. "You know me. I'm too old to fight little girls," he said. "Say, wait a minute. You're in luck. There's a 5th grader in the clubhouse. Maybe he'll box you." "If I win, will you pay Lake his $2? said Sally. "Of course," said Bugs. "Am I not a man of my word?" Bugs tossed a pair of boxing gloves at Encyclopedia's feet and disappeared into the clubhouse. His voice sounded from inside. "Some fresh dame thinks she can make you eat dirt, Bearcat." Encyclopedia picked up the gloves. Nervously, he pushed the right glove over Sally's hand and began lacing it. Ike did the same with the left glove. Presently Bugs came out of the clubhouse. With him was a boy wearing boxing gloves. The boy looked like 3 5th graders. He was as tall as 1 and as wide as 2. "Bearcat," groaned Ike. Bearcat's little dark eyes studied Sally up and down. "She don't look like much," he said slowly. "She thinks girls can do anything boys can," said Bugs. "I don't know," said Bearcat, tapping his knees without stooping. "I never boxed a girl before." "She's been asking for it," said Bugs. "You know what? She said you'd have to fall down a well to get a deep thought." "Would I lie to you?" "Give it to her." Bearcat shrugged. "If you say so, Cousin Bugs," he muttered. He advanced on Sally. Quickly Encyclopedia stepped between them. "It won't work, Bugs," he said. "The fight is off. You made Ike hire us just so you could get revenge on Sally by putting her against Bearcat." "How did Encyclopedia know?" The case of the headless runner. Riding the bus home from the Globe Theater, Encyclopedia wondered why he had done it. Why had he let Charlie Stewart talk him into seeing the triple feature horror show? He wished he had stayed home and read a book. He could have learned something useful. Through the window of the bus he peered at the night sky. Clouds were gathering to the north. "I'm going to be scared enough walking home in the dark without a rainstorm beating down," he thought nervously. On the seat beside him, Charlie Stewart gave a shudder. "I was fine through the headless vampire and the killer gorilla," said Charlie. "But those floating hands in the torture chamber of Dr. Lafarge brrrr." They were nearing their stop. Encyclopedia hoped some other passengers would get off with them. "Pine Needle Lane," called the driver. The two boys moved stiffly to the door. They were the only ones getting off. In a moment, they were standing alone in the dark night. "It's spooky," moaned Charlie. "I know something terrible is going to happen." "They were just movies," said Encyclopedia. "Nothing in them was real." "Gorillas are real," insisted Charlie. "They can kill you." "The nearest gorilla was in the Crandon Zoo, and he died last year," said Encyclopedia. "Now cut it out. There are no such things as headless vampires and hands that go around by themselves strangling people." They began to walk. "What about all the door lights that have been mysteriously broken in the neighborhood lately?" said Charlie. "Those floating hands, they always put the lights out before they attacked, remember?" "Did you have to bring that up?" mumbled Encyclopedia. The boys walked faster. The night was growing darker. Storm clouds had blotted out the moonlight behind them. They had to walk 8 blocks on Pine Needle Lane and then 4 blocks on Rover Avenue to Encyclopedia's house. Charlie lived 2 blocks farther down Rover. "Would you like to stay over at my house tonight?" Encyclopedia invited. "I'll use my sleeping bag." "Thanks, but Ely make it home," said Charlie bravely. "Besides, there's not a light out." It was true. Every house along Pine Needle Lane had a friendly door light burning. But the street and the spaces between the houses lay blanketed in shadows. The boys had covered 6 blocks in record time when a bolt of lightning turned the night into bright day. As the lightning faded, a sharp tinkling noise sounded, followed by a mighty clap of thunder. Charlie shot into the air as if he were practicing to be a human cannonball. Did you hear that?" he whimpered. It sounded like glass breaking. Suddenly he pointed and screeched, "Yee! I knew it!" The door light in front of a nose halfway down the block had gone out. Encyclopedia stared at the blacked-out house. His eyes strained, searching the night-covered street for a pair of hands, or the ghost of the Crandon Zoo gorilla, or a headless vampire. "Save yourself," squeaked Charlie. "I can't move." "Try to run," urged Encyclopedia. "Try." Too late," chattered Charlie. Something was hurrying toward them from the direction of the blacked-out house. As it drew closer, Encyclopedia made out a person almost. The person seemed to be waving his arms wildly above his head. Only he had no head. Please, feet, wailed Charlie. Do your thing. His legs started going like 60. Not running, knocking. Encyclopedia was looking for a soft spot to collapse when the runner stopped and a head popped out. It belonged to Duke Kelly. Duke lived on the block and was one of Bugs Meany's tigers. He had been pulling a shirt over his head while running. Charlie gave a yowl of relief. "What are you doing out here?" he demanded. "I was reading by the window," said Duke. "I must have dozed off. That clap of thunder woke me." "So you ran down the street like a headless vampire," said Charlie. "If I didn't have too much nerve, I'd have been scared sick." "What's this vampire jazz?" said Duke. "I woke up and looked out the window. A bolt of lightning lit the street, and I saw two kids throwing rocks at Mr. Taft's door light. They broke it. I grabbed a shirt and tried to catch them." "You chased them while putting on your shirt?" said Encyclopedia. "Most kids take off their shirts when they fight." "Us tigers fight like gentlemen," said Duke. "You'll lose to a tree someday if you keep putting on your shirt while you run," warned Encyclopedia. "Not this shirt," replied Duke, laughing. "It's a loose knit. I can see through it." He tacked the shirt into his jeans and regarded Encyclopedia and Charlie suspiciously. "What are you two meatballs doing out at night?" he said. "Breaking door lights, maybe?" "Good try, Duke," said Encyclopedia. "But you have to do a lot better. You're afraid we saw you break the light." How did Encyclopedia know? 5. The case of the reward money. Gus Elkin walked into the Brown Detective Agency. "I'm on my way to the city dump," he announced. "Are you looking for something special?" asked Encyclopedia. "I'm not going there to look," said Gus. "I'm going to listen to Wilford Wiggins. He's called a secret meeting at 2 o'clock. He promised to show us little kids how to make lots and lots of money." Wilford Wiggins was a high school dropout. He was so lazy he got dizzy spells thinking about getting out of bed in the morning. During the hurricane season, he opened his window and waited for the wind to straighten up his room. Most of his time was spent dreaming of ways to make money without working. Encyclopedia was kept busy protecting the children of the neighborhood from his crooked deals. "What's Wilford selling now?" asked Encyclopedia. "He wouldn't say," replied Gus. "It's something big, though. I've a hunch I ought to trust him." "You're safer trusting an elephant to bring you a bag of peanuts," warned Encyclopedia. "Maybe today will be different," said Gus. "Wilford didn't tell me about the meeting," observed Encyclopedia thoughtfully. "You've wrecked too many of his get-rich-quick schemes in the past," said Gus. "That's why I want you to come with me in case Wilford's up to his old tricks. You know, smooth talk and a slap on the back. When Wilford slaps you on the back, he's trying to knock the money out of your pocket," said Encyclopedia. "Let's go." The boys rode their bikes to the city dump. They arrived as a crowd of children was gathering around Wilford. He stood on an old wooden table, looking very aboveboard. "I asked you out here because I don't want any snoopy grown-ups stealing my secret," he began. "I know this place hurts the nose. But each and every one of you will walk home smelling like a rose after you hear what I have to say." Bugs Meany shoved his way to the front. "I didn't come here to smell anything except money," he said. "Ah, the sweetest smell on earth," agreed Wilford with a grin. "Okay, step closer. You've heard of the armored truck holdup in Detroit last week?" The children shook their heads. You should read the newspapers, scolded Wilford. A lone gunman got away with $1 million in cash. And you found the money in your lunch pail, sneered Bugs. Not likely, said Wilford. But I know where it is. So tell us, shouted several children at once. I'm getting to it, said Wilford, holding up his hands for quiet. Yesterday, he said, my pal Jim Baker took the bus from Glen City to Idaho. As he sat down, the loudspeaker in the station blared. It said that the Detroit armored truck robber was believed to be in or around Idaho. Everyone was asked to watch out for a red-haired man who acts suspiciously. Let me guess, said Bugs, rolling his eyes in disgust. Your pal Jim Baker spotted the robber on the bus. Well, it's true, Wilford said calmly. As the bus started, a red-haired man in a brown suit spoke to a blond man sitting across the aisle. You know what he said? The children were silent as stones. Wilford continued. The red-haired man said, Did you hear the loudspeaker? I'd better slip off at the first stop. Get the money. It's in Detroit in my closet. But keep away from airports. Rent a car. Here's my address. Wilford paused to let the suspense build before going on. The red-haired man wrote on a piece of paper and gave it to his friend. Then he said, Memorize the address and tear up the paper. Wilford held up a slip of paper. It had been torn into pieces and was taped together. This is the address where the stolen money is, he cried. My friend Jim picked up the pieces from the floor of the bus after the blond man got off. Carefully, Wilford returned the paper to his pocket. I have to beat the blond man to Detroit, he said. I don't dare telephone the Detroit police. I have to see them in person to be sure of the big reward. So you're putting the touch on us for the plane ticket?